Welcome to Level Up. I'm Sharelle.
And I'm Dani. And this is the podcast where we talk about health, fitness, and mindset. Maturing in the gym, the evolution of your fitness journey.
Yep. We're about to speak to your soul, whoever you are. You're going to feel like you're being personally attacked. But no, in all seriousness, today we're going to be chatting about the different stages of your fitness journey. So no matter where you're at, whether you're just getting into the gym or whether you've been lifting for 5 to 10 years, or even if you're a coach and you're a profession in this field, this podcast is for you. This is for everyone. And I feel like we all go through these different stages. Sure, they might come with different timelines, like you might be in a certain stage for a lot longer, but these are the common ones. And especially if you're listening to this podcast, I feel like you're really going to resonate with some of the things we're going to share today.
Amazing. So we've categorized it as beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And you can fall sort of in different positions on the scale, but you're going to be within one of those three categories. The reason for this podcast is to just allow you to feel like we're normalizing every scenario that you could possibly be in, because we're all just so hard on ourselves that when you're a beginner, you know, we get chatter about certain things. Intermediate, advanced. A lot of this sort of nothing is good enough mentality creeps in, and, you know, I need to be making more progress, but we're just here to say it's all good. It's all part of the process. You are normal. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah, totally. And with a lot of the stuff that we're about to talk about today, I think I can speak on both of us, Daddy, but this is a lot for the people we work with as well. We get a lot of context from the people that we work with. So this is why I know it's going to resonate for a lot of people, especially the beginner stuff, because a lot of people do fall into this category. And I do want to start out by saying there's nothing wrong with being a beginner. Like, everyone starts as a beginner. No one starts at the top. We all start as a beginner. And if I could listen to some of the advice that we're going to give today when I was a beginner, I wouldn't have been a beginner for like 4 years.
Yeah,
right?
True.
So embrace whatever season or whatever stage you're at, because we all go through different seasons and different stages, and it doesn't matter what stage you're in. There's always work to be done in that stage. Like, you don't just get to advanced and that's it. There's different levels in that, and you're constantly going to be working on the skills within that little category there as well. So I do want to start, because for some reason beginner is like a bad word. Like, people are like, oh, that's mean. It's like, why? Beginner. I love being a beginner at certain things.
I miss it.
I crave being like a novice at something and learning, right? There's so much growth to be made in that first stage. So I know we're about to get into that one, but I just really wanted to say that, because I was like, oh, do I say beginner? Yes, that's what it is.
It's not a swear word.
Starting out. But a lot of people do take that offensively when you're a beginner at something. And what we're going to talk about today, but beginner's not just based on the years as well. There are some clients that I work with that maybe have been taking their health and fitness seriously for 10 years, but I still classify them as a beginner. And that might be hard, but if I treated them like intermediate or advanced, I'm doing them a disservice by treating them in that way and getting them to focus on skills and habits that aren't relevant to that season that they're at. So bit of tough love, embrace wherever you are, because if you don't, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're not going to make progress.
Yeah, the hardest part about being a beginner is admitting that you're a beginner and that you have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
But that's also a superpower, because it's all new to you. And I remember I used to love being new at a job, because that was my excuse.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that. I'm actually new here. And I probably said that for way too long.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, I can't really use that as an excuse anymore. But you just have to embrace the beginner phase, because you kind of, you know, you're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to say, I don't know the answer, but I'll find out. All of these things that a lot of us who are high achievers don't actually like. A lot of people don't like not having the answer or not being amazing at a skill. But it's like, hang on, flip the idea of being a beginner and actually enjoy just not having so much pressure on yourself and being able to make those mistakes and learn from them.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when, even when I was thinking, when you were saying that, when I was a grad nurse, it's like, oh, I'm not really sure where that is.
Oh, you're delivering a baby. Sorry.
Sorry. But you have mentors and people around you, and it's like a permission slip to make more mistakes. Whereas once you get more advanced, that's when it gets harder. And that's what I was saying, is it's hard for people to acknowledge that they're still a beginner, because they didn't take those things seriously when they were going through that stage. Like, I better pay attention here. You know, I better have a white belt mentality. I better be willing to learn. I better be willing to lean in. And like, we may as well just jump into it. But being a beginner is the hardest phase. Like, you fail like 99% of the time. And that's what being a beginner is. It's about your ability to stay with something. That's all we ask from anyone that's a beginner as a coach, is like, just keep coming back. Just keep coming back. You're going to fuck it up. You're not going to get it right. It's going to feel hard. You're going to fail. You're going to miss. You're not going to get it right. Just keep coming back. Keep showing up. That's not what I want to say. But that's really
the
all
voice is everything.
That's it. But like, as a beginner, you just have to do reps, right? It's not about like the quality. It's about quantity. It's about get it done, show up. It won't be perfect. Get it done, not perfect. Like, don't worry about it. You know, and that's the best way, like for coaches, the best way you can support beginner clients is just allowing them to fail forward, allowing them to mess it up and just practice the skill of being consistent and sticking with something when it feels hard and heavy. And being beginner's hard. It's not easy, but no one can skip that stage. Like, you have to be willing to do it. And there's a lot of people out there though that they weren't willing to do that. And then they're like, this doesn't work. You know, and they just jump around and try lots. And that's what I mean is, when you're a beginner, there's no secret pill. There's no shortcuts. You just have to have the ability to stick with something for a long period of time.
Yeah. So being okay with making mistakes and realizing that you need to practice. And ask questions. There's a lot of comparison. So for example, someone new to the gym. Of course, your eyes are going to go straight to that deadlift platform and seeing some chick deadlifting, you know, over 100 kilos, and you go, wow, I will never be able to do that. Straight away, the comparison. But try and catch yourself out and say, okay, cool, I'm in an environment where there are pretty advanced people. That's how I can grow. Maybe rather than comparing myself and getting down on myself, I can say, how did they get to that point? And ask questions, ask for help.
Yep.
Again, easier said than done, but you just need to take the weight off your shoulders and say, this is where I learn and practice. Repetition of skills and a mindset that is a growth mindset. You don't know it all.
Yep.
We'll never know it all, but at the start, it's like, cool, this is a really transformational time for me right now, because I'm about to learn a whole bunch of skills that I've never learnt before.
Yep. You know, I sought out some coaching or mentoring for myself recently. I've actually been working with this lady for 12 months. I think I've spoken about it. Yeah, and with her, I was learning how to do some Olympic lifting. It's like some snatches and some cleans and things like that. And I was humbled. I was like, man, I suck at this. It's actually quite technical, right? To do like a snatch and everything. So I was literally a beginner in that new style of training. I loved it. I love it because it's easy for me, being probably more advanced, that I know that the hard stuff, like once you push through it, like things get better. Whereas for a lot of beginners, they don't have the body awareness and they don't have the experience that failing forward and pushing through equals success. They don't have that because most beginners haven't actually been successful with a lot of things. They've failed and they've never come through the other side, whether that's because they haven't practiced staying with something for long enough to reap that reward, or they haven't found a good coach or mentor to encourage them in the right way. Like, let's be real, there's a lot of shitty coaching experiences out there that still use old school negative reinforcement and punishment and shame for creating behavioural change, and it doesn't help people go from beginner to intermediate, because we need to be inspired to change, right? Not fearful of the outcome. And a lot of people haven't had that bridge. But for me, like when I was learning some of these skills, it's so easy to forget what it feels like to be a beginner as coaches. Like, it's so easy to just stick to what we've always done and be in the authority seat and be good at it. And you might be able to relate to this too, Dani, but even when I think back to bodybuilding days and we were competing, like, not that I didn't put the work in, because of course I did, but I was pretty successful from the start, meaning that I won my first show and I placed in almost every show that I ever competed in.
Wow.
Because I did the work, don't get me wrong, but winning so early on and being reinforced early on helped me keep going, right? And a lot of people don't understand this, but when you just constantly knock down time and time again, it's really hard to get back up. And I think for me personally, having that success early on in my competing career was like, oh, you're capable of this, keep going, right? And whether that was having obviously the reinforcement externally, but then the right mentors in my corner to be like, no, you're doing a good job, you're great at this, let's keep going, let's keep practicing, stay with it. That helped me be consistent with something, right? Competing. And this is what I mean is that as beginners, you have to stick with something. Of course, not like, doesn't have to be bodybuilding, but a specific type of training, a specific, whether it's like running, lifting weights, whatever it might be. You can't do everything all at once and then not allow yourself to build any skills or confidence in any one area, because you're just going to keep failing, right? You're just not actually going to make much momentum. So I think there's a lot to be said about doing one thing really well and just allowing yourself to practice and become better at it so that you can get positively reinforced and build skills and get some momentum and then, get better as a result. I don't know if you had any experience. I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that, got punched in the face multiple times and didn't get early reinforcement. But when I reflect back on what helped me be consistent, it is positive reinforcement to make sure that I stick with something for a long period.
Yeah, I mean, I think you having the early reinforcement gave you enough to realize, hey, like this is a path that I should pursue. There's a difference between getting knocked down, getting back up multiple times while still making progress towards a goal, such as getting a pro card or winning something or, really developing a skill, versus you just keep getting knocked down to the point where it's like, I do actually need to change paths.
Yes.
The mistake that people make, well, two mistakes. One, they quit too early.
Yes.
Or two, they just keep going when they really shouldn't.
Yeah.
You remember the show Australian Idol?
Oh,
and
yeah.
You have their backstory.
I've actually started watching that again. It's back on.
I didn't know it was back on.
Yep.
I'll chuck it on for a good laugh, because you get the people and they're like, yeah, my mum said I was the best singer growing up and I would perform concerts with the family. And it's like, your family were just bullshitting to you the whole time because you actually suck. And now they're on national TV and they are just, they should have just quit. So like,
don't listen to your mum.
Sometimes that positive reinforcement, cannot be good. Obviously, you need to pay attention and say, hey, like, I'm falling down and getting back up, but I'm still improving. I will pursue this. Or I'm falling down, getting back up, but I'm trying my hardest. I don't enjoy it and I'm really not making progress. Change. You turn on a shitty movie, you're not enjoying it. It's been half an hour through the movie. It's like, I'm actually not going to finish this movie. Don't be the person who just wastes another 2 hours on a crappy movie when you're like, I really should have just turned it off. That first half hour taught me enough.
Yeah, totally. And I think, look, genetics and everything do come into play when it comes to fitness as well. Not everyone starts on the same playing field. There are some people that, have more potential in certain things than others. Like people that run marathons, they've got a different type of body than swimmers, right? So we do have different genetics and different things that come into play when it comes to the sport that we pick. But when we're talking about just being a beginner at fitness, like I'm talking like round one, like 1 to 2 years of just simply getting into things, you just have to stick with it. Like you just have to stick with it. And some people just need to be told that, like it's going to be hard. This is going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be easy. The people you're looking at, they're advanced. They've been doing this for 10 years. Like you need to know where you're at and you need to know what you actually need to do to be able to get to that next level. And don't think you're better than what you are as well. Like a lot of people, and I smile because I'm like, I've probably done this too, don't worry. But I've had people come into coaching that have said like, yeah, I'm quite advanced, and we literally have an assessment for this to say where people fall objectively, not me. I'm not my opinion. Objectively, where do you fall from both nutrition, training and mindset? Like where do you actually fall? And a lot of the times people start coming into coaching as a beginner. Like maybe they have poor self-esteem and a negative mindset. They talk down on themselves. That's important, right? Training wise, maybe they have low training intensity. They're not tracking their weights. They're not progressively overloading. They're not following a structured program. And then maybe their nutrition knowledge base isn't quite there either. Like maybe they still think carbs are bad or they don't know how to track properly or consistently. That's probably the majority of the world. Don't you agree?
Totally.
Like that's okay. Like if you don't know where you are, like how are you going to know where you need to get to or what you need to do in order to get there? And a lot of people think that they're advanced or intermediate or whatever it might be in lots of different things, whether it's personal or professional. But to know where you are and know where you fall, it's only going to help you take the next step and notice what you need to focus on. Because I personally find as a coach that so many people are focusing on stuff that doesn't matter. They're focusing on the 1%ers. And it's like, this does not matter for you as a beginner. Like, please don't look at moment arms yet. Like, please don't look at the carb cycling. Like, you don't need to. And people just get so consumed in all the information, they don't know what's relevant to them. And this is one way, is like assessing exactly where you fall and like what's the low hanging fruit that you need to focus on.
Yeah, and you need to nail the beginner process. Learn and master the basics, because if you skip that part, moving into intermediate and advanced, without mastering the basics, you're going to have to go back anyway.
Yep.
But then you're going to have to unlearn bad habits.
Yeah.
We see it with training all the time. People are squatting, deadlifting, bench pressing, I don't know, doing plyometrics. They can't even hold a simple front plank.
Yeah.
No wonder you're injured, or no wonder you've hit a plateau. It's like, enjoy the beginner skill developing process and this time, because that is really going to set you up for the rest of your training career.
Yeah, because you can't build on top of a foundation that isn't there.
Exactly.
So like what you said, a lot of people look at, even training wise, they look at a lot of basic exercises and they go, pff. And it's like, you can't even hold a front plank. Like, you can't even hold a side plank for 60 seconds. Like, why do you think you need all these fancy stuff? If you can't do the basics well, you're not going to have anything to build on top of.
Exactly.
And this is when, like you said, people have to backtrack. And this isn't just training. I see this with nutrition a lot, where maybe people hadn't done any of the mindset component work with nutrition and they've got some really strong beliefs around that, which is very common. And yeah, they can track macros, but maybe they're having a horrible experience. Or maybe when they're not tracking, they don't know what to do instead, and they don't know how to be adaptable or flexible. And if they're not tracking, they fall off track and like binge or do certain things. And there's layers across different areas that we can do. And I find this like sort of empowering, because I'm like, oh, there's choice, there's options. It's not just me. A lot of people feel guilty and embarrassed because they think that they should be at a level that they're not, but it's like, you haven't been taught it. And a lot of coaches as well forget what it feels like to be a beginner. They forget that you just need to encourage people to practice something, and it's you just need to be consistent. But what does that actually mean? Like, consistency, what does that actually mean? It means when things get hard, I still practice showing up, even if it's not perfect. Done is better than perfect. And we spoke about this before, but people label perfectionism, or people think they're trying to be perfect, but they're actually just procrastinating and they're just not practicing doing anything. And I use that same mindset for myself. Like, whenever I'm doing something new for the first time, like, just practice it. Just have a go. Just have a go. It's okay if I don't get it right. Why would I expect to get it perfect? I've never done this before. And when you can use that practice mentality, like, I'm just practicing, giving it a go, it lowers the stakes, and you don't put this big, heavy armor on yourself that it has to be exceptional, because you wouldn't expect that of someone else.
Yeah, I think the more authority you get in your surroundings and your environments, and the more pressure you put on yourself, it is harder to be a beginner at certain things. You and I have, we're pretty advanced in our training because we do it all day, every day. But not to deviate, but I remember when I moved to Sydney and there was rear to curb parking.
Oh, yeah.
And I've never practiced rear
parking.
Yeah,
avoided it, did you?
Well, in Melbourne, you don't really need to ever do it. So I never thought to go backwards into a parking space. Then all of a sudden, I'm, 31 years old now. I've been driving forever. I moved to Sydney and then I see a sign there. I go, oh, what's rear to curb? And then I start panicking. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then all the voices come in and it's like, wow, you've been driving this long. You don't even know how to do this. What are you going to do when you got a friend in the car? And, it became a mess. And I'm like, right, just get out of your head. Get over it. You're going to have to practice something. Yes, you feel a bit silly or a lot silly. And then what I did, I wasn't, I made sure I was alone. The streets were empty. And I went out there and found empty car spots and I practiced my reverse parking on my own without telling anyone, except everyone now, obviously. But it's like, I just practiced in an environment that I was comfortable with, that I wasn't going to feel like an idiot. So, and now that's my favorite type of parking. But holy crap, like having a new skill where I thought I would have easily have known how to do it. That really did stress me out for a long time. Then I just went in and quietly practiced.
Yeah.
And with people in the gym, okay, cool. Maybe you do need to practice. You don't have to practice in peak hour time. maybe practice at home if it's something that you can, or, you know, when the gym's a little bit more quiet, find a section of the gym where you won't feel silly. I even get this when because I've cut out back squats for a while now. We've had all these new machines at the gym and I thought, you know, I'll give the bar a break on my back. Now the thought of doing barbell back squats again, I go, wow, I know I'm going to be lifting like less than half of what I used to. So even that chatter comes up. I'm not going to be sent a platform with, you know, 50 kilos on my back. It's like, okay, cool. I'll go in and practice at a time that's not busy. So I feel like you can also pick and choose your environments that are optimal for your practice. A lot of it is in your head, but I'm not going to lie and say, oh, don't care what anyone else thinks. Who cares? They know you're practicing. It's like, well, no. You're still going to have those thoughts that come up and say, you know, people are going to be watching.
Yeah.
And they might not be, but like a lot of it is in your head. And if you can just manipulate the scenario to allow you to be okay with practicing, then you're winning.
Yep, I completely agree. I also think that 2024 is going to be the year where people truly start to appreciate how important mindset is in coaching and behavioural change, because a lot of the things that get in the way, it's not information based, it's belief based. We know exactly what we need to do, but like you said, it's hard. And we have a lot of people pleasing traits show up, or we're like, oh, I used to be able to do this weight and I can't anymore. And we feel bad, and then we ego lift. And a lot of the mistakes that we make are from our mindset. And I remember hearing this somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but there's only 3 reasons why we stop making progress. It's a belief problem. So we have beliefs around ourselves, what we should be doing. And this could be like, I should be lifting more. I should be more advanced than what I am. Like this should, could, shoulda, coulda, woulda mindset beliefs. It's either a skill problem. And for beginners, a lot of it is skills. Like they don't have the knowledge base around nutrition or tracking or training or even mindset. They don't know how to think. They haven't been taught. Like, don't speak to yourself like that. Like they haven't been taught how to build a growth mindset, because that is a skill, or it's a process. So in what order do I do what? This is what coaching sort of does. It says, no, focus on this, then focus on this, then focus on that. But when you have the wrong process, it's like people trying to drop body fat, build muscle, run a marathon, play netball on the weekends.
Yeah.
It's like you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once, right? And more often than not, it's a combination of all 3 things. You got bad beliefs, you don't have the knowledge or the skills, and you're trying to do everything all at once or out of order. Like it's a shit show out there, but a lot of it is mindset, right? Whether it's the learning piece or the beliefs that get in the way. I think 2024 is going to be the year where people are like, I'm telling them to do the thing, but they're not doing the thing. I'm going to tell them I'm going to take the thing away. You know, like people just use the wrong practices. But if we actually want change to happen, we have to inspire people and show them the time horizon of what's on the other side. So this is what I'm saying for beginners out there. Like, know that it only gets easier. Like, know that intermediate's fun, right? We're going to talk about that. Intermediate was so fun. Advanced is like hard again, right? You're like, oh, everything's so slow. But when you're a beginner, like if I could have gone back to my beginner self when it felt really hard, but the progress was like insane, wasn't it? Like you made all the newbie gains and beginner gains right at the start. And even though it was hard, you were just so conditioned to making quick progress that anything less than that felt underwhelming. But beginner is where you make so much momentum. You set yourself up for the years to come, and you make sure that when you get to intermediate and advanced, the results that you get actually stick. And that's why it's like so important. Like a lot of people wait until they're like ready to get coaching and things like that. But like if you can do beginner well, like you can really consolidate some awesome foundations, I want to say in 12 months with the right guidance. Yeah. But honestly, like I spent maybe 3 years going around in circles because I didn't, bad beliefs, bad skills, and not the right process. Yeah. Right? So if you can actually refine those things, you can get in and out really quickly and things stop feeling hard.
Yeah, and you're just so naive at the start, which is kind of nice too.
Throw the waist trainer on.
You don't know what you don't know. I really enjoyed being a beginner in the gym. I would rock up, I'd do my crunches, I'd do my leg extension.
You did, didn't you?
Run on the treadmill.
Yeah.
You know, but then obviously that led me to just being a quad dominant mess. But you know, like it was fun. You just felt productive. But no, I spent way too long in that phase.
Yeah.
It's like if I was me back then, or I knew to ask for help, or, you know, had a clear target on where I wanted to end up, I wouldn't have spent so long in that phase.
Yeah,
totally.
But
for sure.
Hindsight's great. So that's all we're saying is like, if you're in that phase, like, you know, I know investing in yourself can seem scary, but it doesn't have to be so long. You know, you can really get in, lay down some awesome foundations, just practice sticking with it, showing up consistently, doing that hard foundational work before you move on to being in that intermediate phase, which I'm excited to get into this one because
Get into it,
favorite
babes.
phase. Well,
Get into
when
it.
do you feel like you actually got out of the mud and went from beginner to intermediate? Do you have sort of like maybe a time phrase? Like a time stage or a season that you felt like you went through that?
It was when I got my first coach.
Yeah, wow.
And you just get dragged out of the mud. And it's like,
Aw.
take my
Big
hand.
warm hug.
Big hug. Here are all the answers. And here's the process that you've been trying to scramble together on your own. Here's the guidance. And I wish I had it earlier. But sometimes we didn't know about online coaching and all of this. I thought online coaching was a scam when I started because we were still printing out workouts from bodybuilding.com.
Yeah, I didn't even know
What's
it
all
existed,
this
to be honest.
online technology from someone who's not in Melbourne?
Teenation.com.
Yeah, so it was really nice to have something to follow, someone to check in with, learning how to train properly. Like that was definitely the biggest turning point, not only for my personal training, but then career-wise, having someone to model off.
Yeah.
That's what shot me into the next phase.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the episode. If you are, make sure that you take a screenshot, upload it to your socials, and don't forget to tag us. I think there's a lot to be said about just having role models as well. Like, it's like when you got little cousins and things like that and they start copying you and doing what you're doing. You do that with people that you look up to. And you might notice that, like I notice this sometimes where like maybe people might say things that I've said or whatever it might be. And I'm like, I love that because that's how we actually inspire change. The people we surround ourselves with, you'll naturally notice those traits just through osmosis, right? And we do it. Sometimes we say similar things. Like it's just about the circle that you're in.
Yeah.
You will naturally start to do that. And they say that if you want to change your habits, if you want to change your habits and behaviors, the most effective thing that you can do is surround yourself where your desired behavior is their normal behavior.
Yes.
So it's like peer pressure in reverse, right? If you want to, I don't know, be healthy and fit, go to a gym go to a high paying gym, right? Go to a high paying gym and surround yourself with other people that put money and invest in themselves. And you'll start to value the same things that they do. So that's the same rationale as about, I guess, the 5 people that you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people that don't really agree with that, but
They're silly.
they're silly. They're silly. I just think, because I completely agree. I'm exactly the same. Like when I first started, like my first coach and even meeting you and surrounding myself with people that valued the same things that I did and that also had the same pride in similar goals that I did, I think that changed the mindset piece for me and the beliefs of like, oh, you don't have to hide this, or like it's okay to share this, or you can have these goals and that's acceptable over here, right? That's community and surrounding yourself with people that you belong with, right?
Yeah.
And that will just your growth, because you'll be feared of being left out of that new community. And that's a great thing to have. Like put yourself in circles where you're inspired to fit in and be better in line with your values.
Totally. And they have to want to see you succeed as well. Like find the environment that are ahead of where you are. Don't compare yourself. That's the problem. Too many people compare themselves. It's like, well, no, use this as a tool for growth, because the language that they use and their behaviors and actions is what you can learn how to do.
Yep.
They're literally giving away all the secrets and the clues of how they became successful or such a good person that you aspire to be like. Just learn from them.
Yep.
So many people find it hard to actually hang out with successful people because they just turn the mirror back on them and their insecurities. And that's a shame, because most people actually want to help others. They don't talk about their successes in a way to belittle someone else. They actually, like, I love hearing when you succeed. And I love hearing, and it's just awesome. And then it's like, okay, cool. What are some awesome habits that Sharelle's doing that I can probably learn from? And you just find those gold nuggets of a human rather than comparing yourself. Be like, fuck, they're awesome. How can I be more like them? And you help me all the time. We're here to help each other and our listeners. We're not withholding information. Oh no, only we can be successful. It's like, no, let's all be successful together.
Yep.
But it comes with hanging out with people who might have something that you want to have. Okay, rather than turning it into a negative and the mindset of lacking, it's like, cool, how can they help me get what they've got and get what I want out of my life?
Scarcity mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
What triggers you teaches you.
Ooh.
Right? I love that. Triggers you teaches you. If you get triggered, why? You know, like if you get jealous, if you get insecure, if you feel embarrassed, like what triggers you teaches you. And if you can get curious about that and what's underneath it, like that's going to be the most powerful thing that you can do for your own growth. Because how many people lean away from uncomfortable conversations?
Yeah.
Or like jealousy or bitchiness? Like, fuck's sake. You know, I don't have time for that. You know what I mean? I just don't have time for that. Like Sharelle has left the chat when those things happen. I just can't. So, and I don't know, like some people never grow. It's the shopping trolley thing. Like some people don't want to. And I do think that environment is absolutely essential in that, because like I've experienced this personally where I've gone from like a small country town, which is it's just the way things are back there, to be honest, like small country towns, and they're a little bit behind the times, I would say. It's the way it is, honestly. It gets worse the more regional and rural you go, versus metropolitan, where it's very cultural, very diverse, all opinions are good opinions, and there's not as many norms, I would say, right? Whereas in country, it's like you get married, you buy the house, you have the kid, you do the thing. Whereas you come to Melbourne or something and it's like, God, I could marry a dog. It's like, you know, like there's just so many ways of doing it. Maybe not, that's not, I don't know.
That's coming, 2026, you'll be marrying your pets.
It's coming, but like in a small country town, if you don't play football on the weekend and you don't get pissed and you don't have a big 21st and you're not going out when you're 16, like, and you're not dating someone 10 years older than you,
oof,
do you fit in?
Wow.
You know, that's honestly the way it is. And things have changed a little bit, but it's the power of environment. And this is obviously, we're talking about a very niched little thing here, but if you do want to value your health and nutrition and start taking things seriously, and I know there's a lot of people out there that want to, but they don't know how, it's the easiest way. It's like put yourself in circles that inspire you to raise your standards of yourself. And I think one of the most powerful things that a mentor or a community or a circle of people can teach you is how to think and how to speak to yourself. Grinds my gears when I hear the way that some people talk themselves down. And I'm like, don't speak to yourself like that. Do you know how many parts of yourself are listening? Like when you say that to yourself. And that's what I was saying is like beginner mindset is constant negative self-talk without curiosity. Like if you just talk yourself down, you call yourself fat, you call yourself lazy, you don't allow yourself to rest, and you loop these behaviors and they hold you back, you have a beginner mindset, and that's okay, because who's teaching you how to do that? Who taught you how to think like that? Like that's a question to ask yourself, because someone probably did, right? So you also have to take that ownership on yourself. I have to find people to unlearn this.
Yes.
And one of the best ways, as you said, is role modeling. If you put yourself in a group where you've got someone authority that you see as an authority or a status, like a coach, and they talk to themselves in that way and they hype themselves up and they look after themselves and they have non-negotiables and boundaries and all the things that you aspire to have too, you'll start doing it, right? I don't know if you've had that similar experience, but I see that as so low-hanging fruit, just role modeling.
Oh, it changes everything, and it really opens your eyes to the endless opportunities in life. Like you said, small country town, it seems like that's the only way. Or even with me in school, you feel like, okay, this is the way it has to go. You have to go to uni, you have to work in an office, that's you forever. But then hanging out with people who did work online or, you know, who were ahead in business, and they shared books with me to look at, and you really just learn, hang on a minute, there's not one mold for life. You can actually be responsible. But then when you're moving from beginner to intermediate, you know, it's not like the complete 180 mindset shift. You're just dabbling. You know, old habits are still popping up, but you're starting to get hope for a new future and a new way of thinking. And it's about breaking those habits slowly, but it still takes time. And then you might go back to the default pattern, a little bit of self-sabotage, but then you kind of get that help again and you go, nope, it's going to change. And it's a beautiful transformational period where your eyes do open and you do become more hopeful with your life and start to question your old beliefs and question those old friends and even maybe your family and go, like, I love you, I respect you, but I'm going to go here now and just test what's over here and try something different.
Yeah. It's really hard, but all change starts from the mind, and I firmly believe that. Like a lot of, definitely myself, but then a lot of the clients that we work with, we use nutrition and training as like a form of personal development. It's not just about going to the gym and ticking off your numbers, right? It's like a form of looking after ourselves, and it's a form of like growth and goal setting and holding high standards and achievement and success and filling up our own cup and self-care. Like going to the gym and looking after your nutrition and working on your mindset and learning, like it has such a powerful ripple effect into almost every area of your life. And that's not going to be applicable to maybe all your friends and family. If you're listening to this far in, you probably fall in underneath that category.
Yes.
But that is not the case for everyone. And that is okay, right? Can't stress that enough. Like not everyone needs to love the things that you love. Not everyone needs to use nutrition and training as a form of personal development. They just want to like be healthy and not die. And that's okay. They just want to look after themselves. And that's okay, right? And that's why we're saying if that's a big portion of your friends and family, you also need to have spaces where your goals are normalized and be the small fish. Like I love being in a room where people have bigger dreams than me and I'm like, damn, is my bar too low? That's a good feeling. It sort of questions your belief of what you're capable of. Again, beliefs, skills, process. Which one is holding you back? Probably a combination of all of them, but definitely once you're in that intermediate realm, it's definitely going to be a lot of beliefs that can hold you back. Like beliefs going back to being a beginner, they're going to loop you back into old ways of doing stuff.
Yeah. And that's when the self-empowerment comes into it. Like from having a beginner client to then intermediate, they become more self-sufficient. Even in like the rehab space, they start to realize, okay, like I see this with my clients, they start to realize, okay, maybe I don't need a weekly massage or a weekly adjustment. I can actually not panic if something starts to hurt and use the tools to then problem solve myself. So whether training, nutrition, or just, you know, any goal that someone has, they start to get that self-belief because they're acquiring those tools from the mentor. So that's an amazing layer. And that is what allows people to have the confidence to then question old beliefs. So go, well, actually, I'm acquiring all these tools in my tool belt now. I'm still experimenting with how to use them, but this is making me feel more confident in my abilities to then move forward without relying on old people and old patterns and habits. So it's a really nice feeling to take that control back a little bit, still asking questions from mentors, but then realizing, hey, it's okay. I'm problem solving for myself now rather than just handing all responsibility to someone else.
Yep.
It's
so
cool.
true.
It's good to see.
Yeah. I feel like when you're a beginner, you do what you're told. And when you're an intermediate, you question what you're told. Right. And there's a big distinct, but I feel like for me, definitely, like when I noticed myself thinking about my thinking or questioning things, it was definitely when I was a lot more analytical. I was a lot more data driven. I was measuring things. I brought an Oura ring, like I was tracking progress. I was being less subjective about how I'm feeling and I was working towards something. And I was very intentional with what I was doing. You know, I wasn't just mixing everything all at once. Again, that process piece was very clear to me. And that's what I noticed for a lot of people is like when they're into that intermediate phase, they're focusing on accuracy. Like they're logging all their sets and reps. They're tracking their macros religiously, and we've been in this stage too. They're not missing check-ins. Like they're doing the things and they're questioning and they're getting curious and they're learning. You're not doing that when you're a beginner. Like there's a lot of those things that it's not what you're at. You don't need to be honest, to make momentum and practice being consistent. But once you're an intermediate, like you're ticking the boxes, you're doing all that stuff, and now it's about quality. Like quality work, not just doing more, but making the most of what you're actually doing and being efficient with it.
Yeah, very data driven and not emotional. But then this can swing into too much of it in a sense. And that's why we were talking about this when we were writing the notes in a sense. Like we wouldn't call 100% compliance advanced because there's no flexibility. So it's a little bit of a tricky one to get your head around sometimes. It's like, okay, now they're doing the things and getting the goals, but there's rigidity as well. And you and I don't consider that to be advanced because there's no flexibility.
Yeah,
because it's like, okay, cool, you've learned how to follow the process now, but what happens if you're in a situation where you can't follow the process? And normally they freak out and throw in the towel and it's game over.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have just thinking of like a lot of clients that like, because I think we have to learn to be disciplined before we learn to be flexible. Like we have to learn to hold ourselves to a standard and follow through on our promises before we can pull back mentally and be okay with it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people just push really hard and then collapse and feel bad, and push really hard, or they binge and then they collapse, and then, you know, they have this yin and yang and this all in, all out mindset. And true flexibility and adaptability is, I'm not going to track today, or I'm going to go out and eat this, and it's okay. And I'm not going to lose sleep about it. I'm not worried, and it's fine. You know, they can generally be okay with it and still know that they're working towards their bigger goals, that it's not disruptive. But a lot of people really do struggle with that because they're all in or they're all out. And as you said, I would still put that in that intermediate category of like, great, you can stick to something, you can practice it really well, but you still don't know how to be quite adaptable yet. And that's okay, because that's definitely that advanced layer, I would say. And advanced is going to be context dependent, but I think for what we're talking to is like, it is going to be learning to be flexible and adaptable with your process and not feel like you're throwing the towel in just because you can't be perfect.
Yeah, I think it's about going on your journey without so much negative feelings coming up, being okay with it. So like when we were doing our comp preps, for me, again, like I was on track. We turned pro. We got the job done. But then throughout that comp prep, if something wasn't in my control, I wouldn't freak out, but I'd get stressed. Like if someone invited me out to dinner.
You look at the menu.
Yeah,
like,
that's why dating was impossible. You're lucky you had Luke, but like trying to go on first dates with people, 5 years of comp prepping was just, you know, protein bars in the bags, in my bag at the cinemas or whatever, like, because I would just get stressed out, man. And that's why we would not consider that to be an advanced mindset. Although the actions were on point to get the outcome of being bodybuilders professionally, it's like there was no deviation, which served us. But I don't want to live a life like that. No. That's why we're here right now and classifying the advanced mindset to be a little bit more well-rounded with life. You're able to enjoy all elements and then not freak out when you have to pivot. It's putting in the years of knowledge and realizing there's not just one way to get the outcome. It's like we can be flexible now, get the outcome, and still enjoy all elements of life. That's the advanced mindset.
Absolutely. And you see this a lot with, I guess, even like athletes, you know, that struggle, that go into like major depression after they've just been rigid for so many years. They're obviously advanced at their craft, but when we're talking about the ability to have multiple layers of your life and multiple areas, and most people listening to this don't want to be like Olympians. You know, you want to be able to have health and fitness as a core part of your life, but not the only part of your life. Because like you said, when competing was your only part, you had relationships suffer and you had multiple areas suffer. That's not what most people want, right? That's not what's necessary either. And I think a lot of people think it is. Like, it's like, I must be like a bikini pro. And a lot of people coach like that. It's like, nah, like, you know, goal context dependent. Like, do you have to hit your macros to the gram 7 days a week? Probably not. You know what I mean? But this is again what's taught and what's reinforced. And I think that a lot of people can get trapped in this and just cycle between beginner and intermediate because they're all in and they're all out, and they're all in and they're all out. And they've never been taught that it's 10 times harder to achieve a result than what it is to sustain it. So if you achieve something, great. Maybe you had to go all in on getting that result. To sustain it, you don't have to, right? You don't have to. And most people haven't practiced like pulling back a little bit and like having a fucking drink on the weekend, and it's okay, while still achieving goals personally and professionally. Like, you can have both. It just, again, process. You have to go through different stages, have to be intentional, and you have to practice like pulling back a little bit whilst not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
Oh,
Been a while.
Oh, I can sleep tonight. You've said it. Oh, fantastic. Well, we're well and truly into talking about advanced.
Yes.
And I wonder if we took anyone by surprise, because I'm sure a lot of people would have thought, oh, they're probably going to talk about advanced being 1 and 1/4 reps with a rest pause, that bullshit, 30-degree kickback. No, It's the mindset of flexibility, adaptability, and still getting your goals. I don't care about your 1 and 1/4 reps if you've got a shit mindset.
But I also think even on the thing of training, right? Like for me, for someone to be intermediate with training, they have to have a really good relative strength base. You know, like maybe they can deadlift 1.2 or 1.5 their body weight at least. That maybe they can squat their body weight at least. Like there's metrics where you've got to be like relatively strong. I don't care about your quarter rep if you can't squat your body weight. Do you know what I mean? So there's certain things with training as well, because again, it gets so confusing for people. It's like you don't even have to do half of that shit if you're just training hard enough.
I know.
Do you know what I mean?
Literally.
So again, yes, I'm talking about success for the general person that just loves health and fitness and uses this as a form of personal development, like what stages you should be going through. You can't skip the beginner stuff. It's hard, right? We all start there. Doesn't matter what level you're at or what you're aiming for. We all start with that. And then intermediate, again, you need to really be purposeful with what you're doing. Quality over quantity now. Less is more, right? And we speak a lot about this, and I feel like a lot of our previous podcasts and seasons, we were in that mindset. So you could see how we grew through it as well. We were intermediates just trying to figure out how to be more adaptable.
Yeah.
I think back to like even when we were early days going to the supermarket and prepping, like I definitely was, eating stevia and cucumber and doing all sorts of stuff.
You taught me the cucumber trick.
It was great.
Literally when you're hungry, just eat a whole cucumber.
Yeah, like guys, why no one tell me this? I look back now and I'm like, oh, some of the things they were doing were a bit fucking disordered, weren't they? But that's okay. We evolved.
Yeah.
But that's why I classify advanced as someone that can truly be adaptable. I also think there's a difference between adaptability and flexibility. I feel like flexibility is a little bit yes and no, on and off. Whereas adaptable, I still have standards and I still have non-negotiables that I meet, but I can mold them into my week.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe I've got to hit my 4 training sessions. Flexibility is like, oh, I'm just going to skip a session today. Whereas adaptability is like, what do I need to move around so I can still meet my targets?
Yeah.
But also prioritize other areas of my life. That's how I look at adaptability, and that's what I expect of advanced clients. Is like, if you can't do your check-in on a Sunday because you're going away from the weekend, do it before you go on a Saturday. You know, it's adaptable, not choice. It's not flexible all the time. And I think, again, there's a difference there, especially when I think about advanced clients. It's like, if you're not flexing around and adapting and you're choosing yes and no because you feel like it, that's still intermediate.
Oh, yeah. It's not an excuse. Just because you were busy on the Sunday doesn't mean you don't check in for the whole week. Be creative and go, oh, maybe I'll just hand it in a bit early because I'm busy on that day. But some people who aren't ready and still need excuses really fall back to that. Yeah. And they're like, oh, no, I couldn't train legs on Monday, so I'll just skip it this week. You know, you notice habits like that. But for people who are advanced, like brushing your teeth, they know the job has to get done and they find a way to do it. And it doesn't take as much brain power to be advanced. You know, we go to the gym, we watch our nutrition, whether we're tracking or not. You just know because you've spent years and years practicing the same skills. You know how to get it done. Yeah. Or like if the leg press is taken, you don't have a meltdown because it's on your program. You go, oh, I'll just do a similar movement pattern. And I feel advanced is kind of like there's not as much weight on your shoulders because you're just okay with the change. The hardest part is getting to that point through practice and repetition and moving up that ladder to be okay with the change through confidence that you know that skill well. You know, and then we get into the gym, get out, we meal prep, whatever, or if we're out, we make good food choices and then we focus on our business or we spend time with our partners or friends. It's a lot more well-rounded, and I really am proud of the stage that we're in right now because yes, there's push and pull and different priorities, but it's not like I'll never let myself go back to that comp prep mentality where I sort of just let everything else go. Yeah. I had to at the time and I love myself for it. Good job. But it's like, it is not needed now. People always say you're going to compete again. And even with you, it's like, no, I don't want to let go of my business. For me, no, I don't want to potentially screw up my relationship.
Yep, absolutely.
That's, so it's like, I'd rather just have the things going for me that are important. All of it. Because you can.
Yeah, and this stage, like being advanced, it's definitely what we're in at the moment. But then we also know what it feels like to not be that, what you're sharing now. And one of the things we wrote down was when you're advanced, there's no need for extreme goals to keep you accountable, right? And I feel like I noticed that tendency in myself in the past where I'd sign up to a half marathon or do another show, and I can see this in other people now where 75 hard, people need something extreme with repercussions to not stick to, that if they don't stick to it, this will happen. I have to get on stage in a bikini for other people to see me.
Yeah.
To stay compliant, and it's fucking heavy armor. And I think one of the best things that anyone can do if they find themselves in this mindset is lower the stakes and practice not needing a big goal to keep yourself accountable. And if you can't do it, that's what you need to get curious about.
Yeah.
Like, do you need some of the skills, the belief, the knowledge to be able to just stay level-headed and consistent for a long period of time? Because one thing I think about is, I think one of the biggest things that makes people restrict and fearful around things is lack of knowledge. Like when you're a beginner, you think carbs are bad, so you don't eat them.
Yeah.
I think you have to do, 7 days of training or run on the weekends to lose weight. So that's all you know how to do. But when you're advanced, you've got such a wide knowledge base that, like you said, if the squat rack's taken, maybe just do a leg press today. Squat-based movement, I can flip that around. Or I'm going out for dinner, I can just portion sizing and listen to my hunger signals. Like I've got that knowledge base there that I know that if I can't do something, it's going to be okay. I don't have to force myself into a mold that could break me from doing that consistently for a long period of time. So when you're advanced, you really do have a lot more flexibility because you have a lot more knowledge behind you and underneath your belt to be able to use for when you can't stick to your plan.
Yeah, exactly. And by all means, we're not saying that we've mastered life.
Oh, hell no.
It's like, training's our forte. We've been doing it for a long time. And there are elements like the Olympic lifting that you're practicing and, I'm changing my training routine. But having this sort of dialed in is allowing us to be beginners and branch out in other areas of life, which is really cool. So yeah, there are definitely elements where we are beginners, but we're just classifying ourselves as advanced with the training because that's what the podcast is about. But I love that. It's like, cool. The focus has been there for, decades for us, or over a decade. All right. We've got a growth mindset. We love evolving. We better find something now that we're a beginner at and improve. So
absolutely.
The cycle just continues, and that really allows you, you give the time to one area and it can be a long time, and then you don't stop there. You go, right, how do I challenge myself? And it might be taking up an instrument or learning a hobby or putting yourself out there and going on dates. You always should be a beginner at something, I think, and it's going to be bloody uncomfortable. And then you've got the advancing that you can go back to when you need a bit of a confidence boost. Oh, well, at least I'm good at the gym. I might be bad here, but I've got the gym and it's great. But you always got to just try and be a beginner at something. That's how you grow.
Absolutely. And just a tip for coaches out there, if you've got clients that say oh, I'm just finished, I feel like I'm finished coaching, you haven't recognized that maybe they're advanced and you're not challenging them enough in new ways. So it's the same for me. If I get bored, I'm going to find something else and do something else, right? So when you're advanced, you need to still feel like you're growing and being challenged, and everything just has to be a little bit more specific as well. So you never just tick the box, you're advanced and you're finished. You find new things to focus on and new ways of doing it, whether it's like your ankle mobility or a new lift or another type of training or whatever it might be. There's always going to be ways to grow at every level.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fun. Just have fun with it, guys, because everything would be so boring if we were just amazing at everything. Don't you reckon?
Oh, totally.
So boring.
No one is either.
No. Oh, you get those people who think they are, and it's like, just shut up. Take the pressure off yourself. I can feel your pressure from here. It's too much. Get it off me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you guys enjoyed the episode today. Like I said, really just wanted to be able to zoom in on different stages because we all go through different stages, and sometimes we're at one stage and we go back to the other one as well. That's also okay too. But knowing where you are, for both nutrition, training, mindset, is only going to help you focus on the right areas moving forward.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and hit follow so you can stay up to date with our podcast every week.